Street signs, road signs, whatever you want to call them, we see them every day when we're out walking, when we're out driving. They're everywhere. Ever wonder why U.S. signs look different than the rest of the world? Well, I haven't actually wondered that until right now from a channel called Half as Interesting, and I wouldn't really know better because unfortunately I have not gotten to travel the world, so I don't know how different our signs really are. Let's see why and how much different they are, and my guess would be part of it being good old American. We got to stand out or we got to be different just for the sake of being different. But there might be more to it. Here we go.
Most places in the world, the road sign for no stopping, as in don't stop your car here, looks something like this. In Austria, it looks like this. In Belgium, it looks like this.
Oh,
Slightly
similar.
different shades of blue, but basically the same.
Yeah.
India's looks like this, Mauritius's looks like this. In a few countries, there are these cute white borders. Japan's looks like this, slightly different angle, but basically the same.
Right.
Pretty much every country in the world has universally decided that the sign for no stopping is a blue circle outlined in red with a red X through it.
Okay.
In the United States, the sign for no stopping looks like this.
Yeah.
And it's not the only example.
Spelled
Most
out.
countries' sign for speed limits looks like this. The US's looks like this. And
Yes.
how about the sign for road narrows? The rest of the world, America. The list goes on. The question is, why?
Okay, so here's the thing, those signs here are mostly, or 99% of them are in English. Obviously, if you know English, I guess it's easy. Like it says, no stopping, speed limit with the number, right? It's very straightforward. But the problem is, there's so many people from around the world here, and obviously there's tourism here too. That's my first thought is it's not very universal, whereas the other ones, it doesn't matter what language you speak. I don't know Japanese, but I see that sign and you can gather what it means. So I think first strike would be it's not the most universal, whereas the other country signs were more symbol based, and I feel like that's a little better, obviously, and not depending on language.
Why? In a technical sense, the car was invented in 1886 in Germany by a guy named Carl Benz. But in a patriotic sense, the car was invented in 1908 in Detroit, Michigan by a guy named Henry Ford. Henry Ford loved two things: being anti-Semitic and producing cars at a scale and at cost that made them an actual viable means of transportation for people, as opposed to previous car models that were essentially just novelties. Soon, its manufacturing dominance turned the United States of America into the car capital of the world, which soon also made it into the road capital of the world. A fact that everyone thought was great and continues to think is great and has generated no controversy or existential urbanist crises whatsoever. Early road signs, much like early roads, were somewhat eclectic and decentralized, often just created by and maintained by private automobile clubs. But in 1927, the American Association of State Highway Officials, or ASHU, published the compactly named Manual and Specifications for the Manufacture, Display, and Erection of U.S. Standard Road Markers and Signs, or Massmediamersum, which, as you might suspect, created specifications for the manufacture, display, and erection of U.S. Standard Road Markers and Signs.
Right.
Then, in 1930, a different group, the National Conference on Street and Highway Safety, or NUCSHUS, published the more urban-focused Manual on Street Traffic Signs, Signals, and Markings, or MOSSAM. Seeing as having two standardization standards wasn't a particularly standardized standard, in 1931, a joint committee was formed, which ultimately gave birth to a beautiful bouncing baby boy that we call the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, a modified version of which we still use today.
I was going to say, that looks, I mean, obviously the old one looked way different, but the name, especially seeing the newer one, yeah, that is still relevant. You can find those today. That's pretty funny. Wow.
The original 1935 code laid out such hits as the octagonal stop sign, although it was yellow at the time, one-way streets, railroad crossings, in addition to specifying stuff like fonts, post designs, and of course, everyone's favorite, minimum vehicular volumes warrant for fixed time signals. Now it's 1951, and what's that sound I hear? Oh man, it's the rest of the world, and guess what? They have cars now. What's that other sound I hear? Oh man, it's the newly formed and not yet notoriously ineffective United Nations, and they want to develop a worldwide standard for road signs so that people driving in foreign countries don't see a sign saying railroad crossing, not know what that means, and then get pancaked into oblivion by Thomas and friends. So the UN set up an experiment in a few countries and 5 US locations: Ohio State Route 104 near Columbus, US Route 250 and Virginia State Route 53 near Charlottesville, Minnesota State Highway 101 near Minneapolis, and some various other roads in New York, where they displayed road signs from a number of different countries to see which were most effective. And not surprisingly, it turned out that Americans, still riding the intoxicating high of World War II propaganda and American exceptionalism, did not take kindly to European-looking triangles telling them how to drive. Just take
Now, look, everyone thinks for themselves, okay? I'm not here to bash anyone's train of thought, but I tell you what, it gets pretty, as an American, it still gets kind of annoying to hear this overwhelming Americanisms, right? Like, we don't like that, those signs, they might be nice, they might make sense, but you know what? It's not like what we've had, so why change it? That kind of thing gets frustrating. I alluded to this in a previous video from a few months ago where I basically learned that roundabouts are commonplace in a lot of places, and quite frankly, they're just not here in the U.S. And it's frustrating because we do have a few roundabouts. They are here. They're just not common. They should be more common. And the few that we have, I do use frequently, and I like them. I like them a lot better because I am famous for one thing on this channel, or if you know me, I hate waiting at red lights. I know probably a lot of people do, but it is like something that infuriates me when there's no one around waiting at red lights. So goofy. Being able to go in a roundabout and be to wherever you're going on the other side of the intersection within seconds is incredible. But of course, here in America, well, we didn't invent that. That's not how it's always been. We don't need that. I like sitting at stoplights. Whatever the deal is, it's goofy. You got my point.
Take a look at this gem of an article from the Mansfield News Journal titled "Ohioans Tell Europe to Leave Its Signs," which includes such quotes as, "I just don't see why we have to take any advice from Europe about our highway signs," and "If I saw a Russian sign, I certainly wouldn't pay any attention to it." Nonetheless, the experiment continued, data was collected, and ultimately that data would later grow into the 1968 Vienna Convention on Road Signs and Signals, a C-tier Vienna Convention that created a universal road sign system, which has been joined by 69 countries and today governs the road sign scene in most of the world. It's the reason that all the no-stopping signs look the same. But adding to their long, illustrious history of spearheading international treaties that they then refused to sign, the United States refused to sign it. Why?
Great.
Well, there are several reasons. First off, America is number one and nobody tells us what to do, least of all our own federal government. See, technically, legally, roads are under the purview of the states, not the federal government, and so the federal government signing a treaty telling them how to handle their roads is a bit legally murky. Although apparently not that murky, seeing as the 1966 Highway Safety Act was able to force all states into compliance with the Mutkid using a clever little constitutional workaround called extortion, threatening to pull 10% of their federal highway funding if states didn't comply. Second, at the time of the treaty, the US was starting to work on what would ultimately become the interstate highway system, which they felt would require a lot of breathless, fast-paced innovation in the rough and tumble world of road signage, and they didn't want to be bogged down by the strictures of a treaty. And third, given that the US had the most robust grooming history in the world, Americans were pretty attached to their existing signs, and they didn't much want them to change. This was proven in the 1970s when the Mutkid tried implementing the Vienna Convention's focus on image-based instead of America's more text-based signs, which turned out to be a terrible failure, with drivers so confused about what things like this meant that we felt we needed to add back in the text explaining that the thing in front of them was a drawbridge, not a sick ramp for kids. In 1978, the Mutkid quietly removed its language about preferring image-based signs. I should also mention that yes, there are a number of other countries that haven't joined the Vienna Convention, including China, Canada, Australia, and Ethiopia, so yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I have seen signs on certain videos from Australia, so I guess they were different, somewhat different than the European signs that we've seen from this video. And of course, they're slightly different than ours. And then again, some of them look somewhat similar. Somewhat, not the same, but somewhat similar. Canada, I have been to and I've driven in, and a lot of their signs are, pretty similar to the U.S. It wasn't a big shock. I don't remember being ever confused there. So yeah, I mean, with anything, you're going to have variation. But it's not that our signs are different that's frustrating. It's not a big deal, really, in my opinion. But it is frustrating, like the reasons, right? It's just kind of funny, in my opinion. But that seems to be the general American attitude. So
not all other country signs look the same. So all the people with the comments already typed up about how this video is too US-centric and I'm a self-obsessed, egoist American road sign file, you know what? Actually, go for it. It increases common engagement.
Alrighty, so that's about it. Nice, quick, concise. Got a lot of info out of that short duration video, so that was actually pretty decent, I must say. It'll be linked in the description down below so you can check it out uninterrupted, and of course browse their channel. I highly encourage you to do that. So yeah, in closing, it doesn't really bother me that some countries have different signs, including us. It doesn't bother me that they're different from maybe the majority. That's not a big deal to me, but unfortunately in that same kind of arena, I do think the picture ones are more effective, like I said, just because you don't have to necessarily, technically not everyone can read. Technically not everyone might know what the words mean. Pictures are just they're more universal. They're more easy for a bigger group of people to understand, I would think. So I suppose that could be said as a weakness for the U.S. signs. But either way, I'm used to them, that's for sure. So I guess they're easy for me. Tell me your thoughts down below. Have you ever traveled abroad anywhere and thought that their signs were better? Maybe they were worse. Maybe it made you confused. I would love to hear your stories. And with that being said, throw a like on there if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to join this amazing community we have on this channel. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. And until next time, y'all, I'll catch you later.